Yeah, we're on. Yeah, mic is on. Everything works. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining this talk. It's a huge audience. This is me. Feel free to connect. This is also me, known by our IT company, but I live up to it, and I try to be the pepcock for the criminal nowadays. Because I don't have any technical background whatsoever. I'm a technical police officer and trained as one. I'm going to take you along the evolution of crime, which is followed by the evolution of law enforcement, because we're always, a step behind, sort of. Sometimes you can get a step up front, but then they'll change the modus operandi and we have to reinvent ourselves all over again. And nowadays, in such a great pace that we cannot do it alone. In previous cases, it was violence, drugs, murder. It was all happening on the streets. We could adapt. We were checking biometrics or DNA, for example, and then the criminals would adjust to that as well. But nowadays, we cannot compete with the level of technical skills which is out there, which is out here, you guys, and try to do it all alone as the police, because we have a huge problem. This is just the Dutch statistics, but there are more cybercrime victims every year. 2.4 million in the Netherlands. That's 1 in 6 civilians of the Netherlands is victim of an online crime every year. And the problem there is, it's in Dutch, but there has been some investigation on the impact on those victims. What do they share if you compare, for example, a physical burglary with a digital burglary? And what's the impact on the victim as well? The impact on the victim is higher with the digital burglary than a physical one. And that's not weird, because if you see how the police reacts, if there's a physical burglary, we come to your house with a car. You can file the report immediately there. We do investigate with the neighbors if they've seen anything. Your neighbors will probably come to you. Can we help you? There's been a burglary. That's a pity. And if we look at the digital burglary, well, you don't know how they got in. It's not like the doors busted open or something. People don't know if they get out. Everything is stolen. And the first question you get when you talk to your neighbors is, did you click a link or something? Or, yeah, you don't fall for that, right? So the whole setting is built on shame. So you can see actually that, in fact, there's a light on here somewhere. Shame, less self-esteem. Those are all parts that a victim of a digital burglary feels, which you don't have as a victim of a physical burglary, because of how we talk about it in society. Well, cybercrime is the biggest threat, as our public prosecutor's office mentioned. Terrorists rely on funding from cybercrime. There's more cybercrime than arms, drugs, and human trafficking. In total, if it would be a state, it would be the 3rd largest economy in the world. And this is a quote of the World Economic Forum 3 years ago. So the current state will probably be much higher. And what we do as the police, we have Operation Haageld, an international phishing organization operating in 11 countries. So we are working together with the Dutch police, with Europol, and we have a good insight on the criminal organization. So what do we do?
En dan bericht voor alle panden. Groen licht voor de instapper in de woning. Politie! Wachten! Maak je ons kut! Hij rijdt over. Politie! Handen op! Handen op jou! Handen op jou! Politie! We hebben 1 man positief aangehouden. Ja, dat is een dag aangehouden. Dag aangehouden in de woning.
So this is where you know us from. We bust in tough doors. You see, we had some trouble there, but and we arrest people. It's reported in the news. That's it. Well, that doesn't work anymore. We believe there should be a balance between repression, arresting those suspects, and also preventive measures. And that's why we use an intervention matrix. So normally, as the police, we would just focus on the suspects and bring them to court. But nowadays, looking at online crime types, we do not only focus on the suspects, we focus on the victims as well, and also the structural opportunity which is in place. And we have, other goals, not just to prosecute them, but also to see what we can do to prevent victims, to disturb a criminal infrastructure, and have a more whole approach on tackling the problem than just going after the criminals. Because nowadays, if you take down, a couple of spammers, for example, there will be 10 others tomorrow up for the task. So it needs to be a combination. And we also noticed when we were investigating criminal phenomena that there are common threads throughout all online crime types. So looking at all those common threads, we defined, 4: communication, financial, infrastructure, and TTP. Those are always part of an online crime. And if there is overlap between multiple crime types, and we can create barriers on those topics, we will be far more effective than just going out to apprehend those suspects. And there's, of course, criminal motivation, which we can also use in our tactics on how to combat it. So if we go back to that criminal organization you just saw, we didn't apprehend everybody. We looked for the key players within these networks. If we take those out, it will have more effect than just apprehending the suspects you have identified. So, for example, on the top right, this is a technical expert who is in contact with 2 coordinators. So not only the one we had in our investigation where he did the technical part. No, he was working for multiple criminal organizations. So if you take some guy like that out, it will have far more effect than just going after somebody who called a victim, like the bottom line there. What we also noticed when we are doing these types of investigations is that in the Netherlands, there was becoming a culture of like normalization of online crime. A whole rap culture built around it, for example, called the F-game. I don't know if it's called in other countries that as well, but influencers actually talking about committing online fraud schemes, actually spitting out the whole modus operandi within the lyrics of their songs. And it seemed normal because there isn't another sound in society which says otherwise. And what we notice is that these are influencers our kids are looking at while scrolling to social media. So if they think that the status and the wealth they're showing is the normal status quo, and they don't hear anything from their environment otherwise, they'll try and achieve the same status and wealth, probably in the same way. So actually, within the comments on videos on internet, you will see people just saying, this guy makes me want to start with F game, fraud game. And then all of a sudden, there's another one reacting to it. Okay, let's start then. DM me on Instagram. And all of a sudden, you see supply and demand for criminal activity start up plain clear on the internet. So we wanted to tackle that problem as well. Then we use the intervention matrix. What can we do to tackle this problem sufficiently? And we fill out possible interventions. So our goals weren't just to arrest those criminals you saw in the video, but to disrupt the criminal business model and also degrade the status of F-game in society. So we wanted to have society respond to the normalization of cybercrime. And what we also try to focus on is enlarging the perception of getting caught, because everything on the internet is built on trust. If you don't trust each other, or you don't trust you're safe, you're anonymous there, then criminality will go down. For example, if you have a very visual crossroad somewhere, you can see in miles that there's no traffic coming, and you put a traffic light there, probably no one will stop, right? I wouldn't, to be honest. But then if you put a camera there to check if somebody ran a red light, the intention of stopping is much higher all of a sudden, because nobody wants that fine. So what we're trying to do on the internet as well is just trying to create all those cameras to show our appearance, that we are there as the police as well, and you are not as anonymous as you might think you are. So looking at all those media coverage we had, there's also some tactics in there as well, aimed to degrade the status of F-game. So it's not just a company or a newspaper reporting that we made some busts. No, it's also on purpose creating, being a measure to counter the image that F-game is normal, a normal way of getting money. And what we also did is like Operation Strip Down. Looking at the motivation of those criminals, they're always, well, online fraud criminals, they're always going for money or status. And status they will show with big cars, big parties, designer clothing. And when we apprehend them, they'll never have money. They've spent it all. So yeah, you cannot get their money because it's gone. But it's all changed into designer clothing. Those designer clothing, if you would sell it on the second-hand market, is still worth something. So they're still rich. If you take their clothing away, and we strip them down into like a €2 paper suit, so they cannot commit suicide in jail, you'll also strip them down from their status. So the impact of getting caught is much higher, because they say, well, I don't have any cash, you can't get the money back, but well, you don't have any shoes to walk back to home. We seized it. The impact is much higher. And what we also did is to have another sound in society. We created a video campaign on social media, targeting the same audience as where criminals are trying to get young criminals starting in a role in their criminal organization. Within 40 minutes, I'll show it. It's in Dutch, but the sound is not working.
We zijn nu al het geld aan het terugboeken op de rekening. Ik ben zo bang dat ik al mijn geld kwijt ben.
Well, sound is not working. But then again, it is in Dutch, so you probably don't understand it anyways. But this is the image they show on their social media, big parties, and we want to show them that, we actually used a sound, a conversation we seized from criminals with the victim, where the victim, an elderly lady, was in tears. I'm so afraid that they took all my money, and the fraudster is actually, no worries, we'll help you. We'll help you get rid of all your money, of course. To get another site on these types of crimes, it's not cool to commit it. No, you're destroying people's lives. So the results of that, we did reach out to a lot of youth via social media. And the fun thing is, you can see the sentiment change. So even on older videos, one was shown in a program within the Netherlands, Vandaag Inside. And then all of a sudden, under that video, like which is a year old or something, there's a comment, 2024, hot, Vandaag Inside. And there is another commenter underneath. Let's hope your grandma or mom gets robbed by those, well, I won't use the same words. But you see the sentiment change. So if it's not cool to commit these types of crime, and it's less visible in society, our youth will be less willing to take over that piece of, that criminal activity. Well, we do that in other cases as well. I don't know if you know Operation Endgame. Does anybody know it? Yeah. We target botnets. This is our high-tech crime unit. And we also have an offender prevention measure within that operation. I don't know if you know the website, Operation Endgame. If you don't know it and you like to binge some series, it's season 3 already, where we took down a criminal infrastructure. I can show you an example. It's close, right? Yeah. So you know what to expect. Let me check. I think the audio's gone again. Yeah. I think it doesn't work. Well, no worries. Just write down the URL and you will be able to check a lot of videos tonight. But this is an offender prevention campaign. This is showcasing what we already achieved within the early stages of Operation Endgame. And because the internet is built on trust, and there are offenders in, for example, Russia, we can take down. That's why the site is also translating in Russian. We can target them by showing what we know of these perpetrators. You can also see that we have some faces of those perpetrators underneath, like most wanted, and we call out to all people that know these perpetrators. Contact us on Telegram and give us some more information about these guys. So if you have a reseller of a certain malware, for example, who knows that the creator of that malware piece is known by the police, and we know a lot of data, because every video includes a lot of specific data on multiple offenders, they'll know not to trust them anymore or collaborate with them in the near future, because they're hot. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. I hope I did it right this time. I don't have to scroll back. Ah, nice. So another way to show you why we need you in our police operations is Operation Cookie Monster. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's already a bit old. Cookie Monster, anybody? Ah, nice. Then it's new information, so it doesn't matter that it's that old. It was an international operation with the FBI. FBI was lead investigator on the Genesis market, which was a clear web market where the credentials and the online fingerprint of around 2 million victims were sold. As the Dutch police, we took the lead in prevention and also the media strategy in this case. But we collaborated with 17 countries in total, and we all made arrests of users of that market. That's a way to go at it as well. We usually seize the market, seize the domain, have a big splash page, fun stuff. But then the user thinks, well, let's go to the next one. But if you target users as well, you can see on the whole scale of markets that the usage of those markets dropped down, because people got afraid that they could get caught as a user as well. So we did a lot of arrests, about 120 on the first day of action within 17 countries. But looking at prevention, this is the market, how you could find it. Very easy to search. You could just put down the flag of the country you want to target. You can see which credentials are in there, bank credentials, if there's a fingerprint active, so active session cookies and stuff like that. They created some Wikipedia, like with GIFs, to show you the software. They also provided you with how to install it, so it will be far more easy for you to make those victims. And they also trying to motivate you with smileys if you're doing well. Well done, you've loaded in those plugins. So this was so easy to use that you don't need to be tech savvy to make use of these type of criminal service providers. So what we noticed is that the people who were stealing a bike on the streets switched to using, for example, Genesis Market to make victims, because it was so easy. until it got fully activated, and then you could, take a lot of stuff from your victim. So of course we have a fancy splash page on the day we took down the domain, but we also worked on prevention. And what the problem was with this case is that there was an infostealer malware Denabot which was infecting all these victim devices, and people didn't know the real consequences of an infection of an infostealer malware. So we tried to we did investigate with private partners into that whole way of infection. Because there were multiple ways people got targeted, for example, and downloaded the infected software. For example, I don't know if anybody uses Notepad++. There was a clone site made of it containing the infostealer. So if you didn't look for the actual site and clicked the top result in your browser, which was an advert of the clone site, you wouldn't notice until it's too late. But we also saw people getting in-game, like a kid in-game in Roblox. You'll get some free skins. Just click this link. Yeah, that didn't work. Well, let's just start playing again. And then all the accounts of all the people in that house, so parents, kids, they all got harvested due to an infection through a game. For example. And the malware dropper was big, filled with empty code to bypass antivirus scanners. And you see there are multiple stages. So the top stages are getting detected pretty quickly by companies doing those antivirus, bringing us those antivirus solutions. But the layers underneath, they're far less known. So the malware dropper will change every hour, but the infrastructure where they download eventually both the infostealer and also a browser extension, that infrastructure was there for a long time. And if you look at this browser extension, it seems to be just like a Google Drive extension, but it was pretty malicious. And these criminals were actually pretty smart, to say. They hid the command and control server where to download this infection in a Bitcoin transaction. Because if you decode the legacy Bitcoin, I think it's base 8, well, you'll probably know better than me. I'm not that tech heavy, but they hid it in a transaction. So they called on the transaction to get redirected to the command and control server. And what this browser extension could do is just automatically read all your email and change it to whatever they just fitted in, because you could inject new scripts in there. So your withdrawal request would just change to an authorized new device. And if you said, well, I don't want to authorize a new device, well, you authorized the transaction. So malicious browser extension got a lot of a copy of all the cookies, or you could screenshot pages. You could do so much stuff. You can even use the victim device as a proxy. And before we did this investigation, the only advice we could give those victims is, return your computer to factory settings. That's good advice. Nobody, well, who isn't working IT is going to do that willingly. So we thought, well, let's change that. So what we actually did by looking into this chain of infection is we found 36 unique elements which we could share with Microsoft, because every victim's device was running a Windows version. So they could push an update of their Microsoft Defender, but we also shared with VirusTotal, so the whole community of antivirus solutions could download it for free. And the fun thing is, our advice changed. We could just say, update your antivirus solution, and if you updated it, run it, and then change all the passwords you have ever filled in on that certain laptop. Because there was an open connection between the victim device and the marketplace. So as soon as you've bought somebody's credentials and they change their password, within like 40 seconds, you'll just get the new password. So you could just keep on, stealing stuff. And the fun thing is, if you collaborate on this topic, you can actually help those victims. We weren't able to do this alone as the Dutch police. Well, at least not as fast as we did in a public-private collaboration. But the stats you noticed on the top right, that was the drop of infected devices after we implemented the antivirus solution and this is only the stats of one antivirus company. So it was really effective to clean up those devices. What we also did is create Check Your Hack. We are working with Troy Hunt and Stefan. You've seen him on the floor here. We work with Have I Been Pwned, share information, but my mother or sister, if they are like thinking I'm a victim of cybercrime, and you want to go to a site, Have I Been Pwned? Yeah, you're not tending to trust it immediately because you've already been a victim. I don't know this site. Can I just add my credentials in there? And we noticed while speaking with those victims that they do tend to go to a safe domain, police.nl. So if we can host something there, people are more willing to check if their credentials are in the data set of Genesis Market, for example, than if they would go to Have I Been Pwned. But then again, our police.nl website is not built for this. Actually, we have like 30,000 unique visitors every day. So we did like a little DDoS attack on our own domain there, because within 24 hours we got over 2 million checks on this device. And it's still run today. Actually, I've been working the past days on adding another set to the data, because Odido got hacked in the Netherlands, which contains a lot of data of a lot of Dutch civilians. So we added it in there last Monday. So very effective. And what we also do is, if we know that there are cybercriminal fora where those admins are active, we also pushed a message out on those criminal fora with a video. I will not play it because the audio doesn't work anyway. To show them what information we have in our hands, which could lead to their arrest. And we also pushed a Google advertisement worldwide. Genesis Market is cybercrime. Remember, fingerprints leave traces. Just so users of this market know, we have done some arrests already, but we will not exclude that there will follow more arrests after this day. So be aware. A whole different case. So just to show more ways of how you can collaborate with us. And this is more targeted to criminal modus operandi. Has anybody heard of pig butchering crimes? Yeah, a bunch. Pig butchering, terrible name, created by the Chinese organization behind it. They fatten the pig before they bring it through the slaughter. So they create and build trust with the victim, and in the end steal everything, leaving them broke. But also there's a big human trafficking part around it, and these cases lead to suicide. Terrible. And it's a big trend. What we noticed is by the data of Chainalysis that it was the highest amount of damages throughout all those cybercriminal activity we saw targeting the blockchain, and actually like 40 million a month in damages only by a certain modus operandi within the pig butchering modus operandi, which was approval phishing. So approval phishing In the blockchain, you can authorize somebody as an approved sender, which can transfer funds from your wallet to somebody else's wallet. They had an approval phishing campaign. You can there are multiple layers they can let you sign that approval. But in the end, if the approval is there, the offender can transfer funds from your wallet to another one. And if you look at the bigger picture, you can also see that they'll flow out everywhere, and they'll come back to one place as well. I don't know if you know. Does anybody know KK Park? No, KK Park. This is I think 2023, and there's a lot of money in this. This is what they built in 2023. Well, 2022, 2023. Well, I think multiple governments will be jealous of the speed they can build like a whole new neighborhood around there. But this is just the criminal organization behind it. And if they have so much to invest that they can build something like this, you know it's an offender you could be wary of. So looking at pig butchering, we also looked at other international operations targeting this. So we have Operation Level Up in America and also Operation Shamrock. So we don't want to do everything twice. That's what we did for years. Now we just want to collaborate and we focus on a different part. So what we did is we just focused on the kill chain. And I see a circle has switched. We went for account access to target that, use the intervention matrix and collaborated public-privately just with the sole purpose of preventing victims and disturbing the criminal business model. And so fairly simple. We just had a sprint in 2 days. Chainalysis shared 1,000 leads. And what we were going to do is to check if there were Dutch victims in there, because we focused on the Netherlands first. Other countries say that as well a lot, but Chainalysis shared the data. We checked all those accounts if they were Dutch. There were actually like 186 Dutch accounts we found. And what we did is we notified the victims, or we froze their wallets to prevent damages. It was fairly effective. Those 1,000 victims, 186 were Dutch. The others were victims as well, but not just Dutch. That's the only part. I think there were 1 or 2 false positives, which has an approval signed, which was correct. And what we did is because we were able to detect that modus operandi, we were also able to freeze accounts which had already like 65,000 euros in one case, just standing there to be stolen. So we were able to prevent victims of falling victim before they even know themselves that they were victimized. That wouldn't have been possible if we just did our police work, because then somebody will fall victim, file a report, and then if they're lucky enough, the police will follow up on that report, right? No, we were able to get upfront and prevent victims, but because of the collaboration with multiple exchanges, by showing them that modus operandi, they could build detection on it. And they implemented it, so we could also prevent future victims. Then, a lot of information, multiple operations. But what can we all do? I think what we can all do is listen to victims. Don't judge. Don't ask. Don't let it be the first thing you ask next time you talk to a victim. Well, you probably click the link, right? Or you don't fall for that. No, just listen to them and ask what they need. That's if we change that perspective, that way we talk about it in society, that would help a lot. Because when people are not ashamed, they'll probably report the crime more often, and we will be handed more information so we can actually act on it. Because what we see now is that only 10% of victims filed a report at the police. So we see just a tiny bit of the information we need. But what can you all do? You are the smart guys and girls in this room. For example, create AI agents. We have hackathons where we were building AI agents to see if we could detect criminal modus operandi on the blockchain. We can try to do that as the police, but this is not our core business. We need to go after those criminals. If we collaborate and work together, we could achieve so much more. If you see new modus operandi, don't just think, I've mitigated the problem. It's gone for us. If you share that data with the police, we could have the possibility to see a new phenomena and investigate on it before more parties fall victim. So sharing is caring on the internet, so please do. And in the Netherlands, I don't know if it's the case in every country, but you can also volunteer as a cyber volunteer and collaborate with us within operational actions where we actually also apprehend those suspects. A lot of information, but as I see it now, where we as the police were there to keep the streets safe, the whole environment of online crime shifted. Nowadays, you guys are here to keep us safe online. And not only civilians, but also the police. We need some help as well. So this is my last message to you. Thank you for your service, keeping us safe. Are there any questions? Or was it crispy clear? I think we have some time for questions. Actually, we have a lot of time. I went through the slides pretty quickly. Nope. Yeah. Good question. Good question. A fun question. We might. But no, well, I'm not excluding. Well, I'm not telling everything we do. But as the Dutch police, we have the right, the lawful right, to hack into criminals as well, and to use all means necessary to do so. And in previous cases, for example, I don't know if anybody has heard of the Hamza market, which was a dark web market. I see some nodding. We took it down, or we took it over, and used it as a honeypot for a couple of months to retrieve a lot of data on the users of the market and what their criminal activity was. So it's really effective. In the case of Operation Cookie Monster, for example, there was the Genesis market who had a Genesian browser specifically to make victims with their software and the credentials you could buy there. There was also a vulnerability in their server. So there was a possibility to, if anybody was using that browser, we could switch off their VPN and just show their real IP from a distance. So that's actually what Computest has found out in that case, in the collaboration. So tomorrow, Daan Keuper will give a talk as well. He's actually one of the guys we work with in this collaboration to look into the chain of infection, but also into the vulnerabilities in the browser they use for these criminal purposes. So it's a real fun way to retrieve more data. Bureaucratic processes make it a bit difficult. That's the harsh truth. But we can do a lot. Yeah. Hope that answered it sufficiently. Any other questions? Yeah, in the back. So your question is, what's my perception on using encrypted services like Signal? We have the same problem with Telegram, for example. The thing is, every communication service is getting encrypted. WhatsApp nowadays. what can you do about it? There's no moderation on those huge groups. They can limit the group size, for example. That could help. The way I look at it, and the way I present it to our government as well, is what we could try to do is enforce our Dutch borders online. Which country does that? Enforce your borders online. But I think there are two ways you can do it. Because if we find a certain app malicious, why don't we get it pulled off the stores? And Dutch IPs cannot reach that certain app, for example. The willingness for a big tech company to change their system might be higher if they're excluded from a certain market than if we just ask them a question, help us because there's malicious content on your server. Shield it, shield all Dutch IPs, for example, for certain stuff. But who's going to enforce that? We don't have a ministry yet that does that. Should the police do that? Should the authority, consumers and market do something like that, for example? Which party is going to enforce the laws? We need like a cyber mayor. A mayor in Rotterdam can close a certain company because there's a malicious or criminal activity there. But who does that on the internet? Just some brainwaves. It's not there yet, but that's how I personally look at it. Yeah. Okay, there was another one in the back. Yeah. 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 The question is, I'm representing the Dutch police. Well, the criminal can be everywhere around the world. What barriers are there to enforce and take on those criminals, I presume? We can only think about barriers where we think they are, because we can collaborate internationally with throughout Europol, within whole Europe, and also third parties, but also through Interpol. There are countries who are not willing to work with us. Of course, that's why we have a fancy site like Operation Endgame to still be able to target them. They're also on the most wanted list, so they cannot travel abroad. We can also indict those suspects. So there cannot be anybody working with those types that committed these crimes, for example. So the fact that we cannot get them from the country where they're committing those crimes doesn't mean we cannot actually harm them or take them on. And the fun thing is, well, the Dutch have a pretty good criminal infrastructure. Amsterdam Internet Exchange, very reliable, cheap, don't ask too much questions. So a lot of bad stuff gets hosted in the Netherlands. So if we cannot find the criminal, we can tap into their infrastructure and do a lot of harm there. Is that sufficient enough as an answer? Yeah, thanks. Any other questions? This has never happened to me before. We even have time left. No more questions? Well, if you want to see some more videos from Operation Endgame, that's possible. If not, I can also thank you for just joining this talk and have a fun couple of days. Thanks.